Welcome, and thank you for joining us today for our 2018 webinar, What is the Value of a PSO? I'm Sherilyn Seeley, Program Manager for Grantmakers in the Arts. Grantmakers in the Arts is a national membership association of public and private arts and culture funders. Our mission is to provide leadership and service that advances the use of philanthropic and governmental resources to support the growth of arts and culture. Philanthropy-serving organizations, often referred to as affinity organizations or membership organizations, hold a unique position in the nonprofit sector. These types of organizations gather insights and aggregate information on both the nonprofit field and the funder response to those needs. Grantmakers in the Arts provides information, resources, and leadership to funders of artists and arts organizations. In a 2017 United Philanthropy Forum study, this revealed that national and regional PSOs reported a median 93% membership renewal rate. And we're excited to have United Philanthropy Forum CEO David Biemesderfer and Senior Program Officer for Kresge Foundation's Arts and Culture Program, Tatiana Hernandez, here today to discuss further. David is the President and CEO of United Philanthropy Forum, a role he began in January 2016. Based in Washington, D.C., the Forum is a national network of 75 philanthropy associations and networks across the United States that represent more than 7,000 foundations and other philanthropic organizations, making it the largest network serving philanthropy in America. Tatiana serves as Senior Program Officer with the Kresge Foundation's Art and Culture Program. Having joined the foundation in 2018, she helps advance the program's goal of creative placemaking, integrating arts, culture, and community-engaged design into community development and planning. She currently serves on the board of Grantmakers in the Arts and previously served on the boards of the GARD Foundation, National Association of Latino Arts and Cultures, Machine Project, and Boss Fisher Invitational. We're glad to have them present on this webinar. At the very end of the presentation, I'll be joining to facilitate a Q&A between Dave, Tatiana, and also GIA's Membership Manager, Jessica Corporan, who will join us to answer GIA-specific membership questions. And with that, I'll turn it over to our presenters. Welcome, Dave and Tatiana. Dave, why don't you kick us off?
I'd be happy to, Sherilyn. Thank you so much for that introduction, and thanks to all of you for participating in this webinar. I'm really thrilled to be talking about PSOs, who are organizations that are near and dear to my heart. This afternoon, I really plan to cover three main areas. I will talk a little bit about United Philanthropy Forum, give you some background about our organization, talk about how we define a PSO, and then spend most of the time talking about what we see as some of the key values that philanthropy-serving organizations bring to the philanthropy sector from our perspective here at the Forum. So to start, I'll just give a very brief history of the United Philanthropy Forum. Up until 2017, for the first 18 years of our existence, we were known as the Forum of Regional Associations of Grantmakers. We worked to bring together 33 regional philanthropy-serving organizations to help them connect, learn, and share with each other so they can be more effective in serving their philanthropy members, and also to help them partner and collaborate with each other. And we had a lot of success in those 18 years in doing both things. For example, we created a public policy initiative that dramatically increased the capacity of the regional associations to engage in public policy by working together to build their skills together and build their capacity together. We also, for example, created a shared technology platform that allowed many of our regional PSO members to get access to real state-of-the-art website and database technology for a fraction of the cost of what it would cost if they had to pay for it on their own. So things we felt were going well with the Forum, but in 2015, the board took 7 months to do some internal reflection. We knew there were a lot more philanthropy-serving organizations out there in the field since the Forum started in the late 90s. And we really wanted to focus on understanding what is really our role in helping advance philanthropy, what is our niche, why do we exist, should we exist, we asked those kinds of questions. And out of those 7 months of reflection, we heard from a lot of affinity groups, national affinity groups, a lot of the regional PSOs. We heard from a lot of funders. And two things really came out clear. One was that a lot of the national affinity groups of funders told us they did not have a network like the Forum to help support their work, and that they valued that kind of network, and we felt that the Forum could do that. And secondly, even more importantly, I think, all of the regional and national PSOs we talked to felt that all the infrastructure groups in the field of philanthropy were not working together as well as they could be and should be. One person we talked to said we're all kind of floating in our own orbits. And occasionally we collide into each other or we connect with each other with one-off partnerships, but it really was not as intentional and as comprehensive and strategic as it should be. And so we felt the Forum had a role to play to really help both support the national infrastructure groups, not just the regional groups, and also help all of philanthropy infrastructure to come together, to work better together for the good of the field. And so last year, at the beginning of 2017, after 2 years of planning with a vision design group comprised of leaders of national and regional PSOs, we've changed the whole focus of the Forum to be a network for both regional and national PSOs. And in the first 2 years now, this is what our network looks like today. We've grown. Sherilyn mentioned at the beginning in her kind introduction that we represent now 75 regional and national PSOs. It's actually now 77. Since the start of this webinar, we've gained a few new members. So the Forum now has grown from 33 regional PSOs to 77 regional and national PSOs. We collectively represent over 7,000 foundations. And so now in our new way of working, we still help all of these groups to build their capacity, to give them professional development support, networking support, to really help them be as effective as they can be in their work. It's a very unique position to be a membership association of a network of funders within this philanthropy space. So we help them to learn and share with each other. We also work to help all of our members partner and collaborate better together, both in small groups or collectively through the power of our entire network. And I'll talk a bit about a few examples of how we've done that. So that's the vision now of United Philanthropy Forum, is really to help all philanthropy infrastructure be more effective to lead change and increase impact in philanthropy. We have a new vision. Our vision is that we envision a courageous philanthropic sector that catalyzes a just and equitable society where all can participate and prosper. Our board approved this new vision at the end of last year, and so we take this vision to heart in just about all of the work we do. So what are PSOs? I mentioned at the beginning, I'd answer that question. How we see it here at the Forum is that PSOs are associations, networks, and other groups that lead, strengthen, and inform philanthropy. They are primarily membership organizations, but not exclusively. PSOs include regional PSOs, what used to be known as regional associations of grant makers, that bring funders together who are located in and or care about a specific state or metropolitan region or a multi-state region. And it also includes national PSOs that bring funders together who share an interest in a specific funding issue or a specific population group or a specific philanthropic practice, or bring together specific types of funders such as family philanthropy or community foundations. So that is our basic definition of how we define a PSO. And now I'll just, there are a few, I think, really key values that the PSOs play in the philanthropy sector. And I think over the past 2 years, their value has definitely been underscored and amplified and better appreciated by a lot of funders across the country. As Sherilyn mentioned, our latest forum research showed that that this year regional national PSOs experienced a really high 94% membership renewal rate. We also found out that that next year in 2019, 50% of PSOs expect their membership numbers to increase, and just 7% expect them to decrease. So I think there are some really specific reasons for why that is, and this is the first one, that PSOs can really catalyze and increase funder collaboration. They can help funders identify other funders who share their interests in a specific issue. They're really great at providing a neutral space where funders can convene to explore collaborative efforts. There's a recent Stanford Social Innovation Review piece that really, I think, really nailed it when they said that PSOs provide ready-made structures for grant makers to coordinate in ways that otherwise might not be possible. And PSOs are increasingly playing a role to catalyze, support, and sometimes even host funder collaborations, from informal, short-term ones to formal, more formal, longer-term collaborations. Another really important value for anyone who's been involved with a PSO, I think, can agree that PSOs provide knowledge and learning to improve philanthropic practice. They really provide effective spaces for funders to learn and share. They are really very trusted and highly valued sources of information and knowledge on the most critical issues facing our field. PSOs are ideal spots for funders to connect, share, and learn with their peers. And a recent first-of-its-kind study by the Hewlett Foundation showed that peer-to-peer connections is the #1 source of knowledge and learning that leads to change in foundation practice. The Hewlett study also noted, as shown here, that regional PSOs are really valuable in bringing together smaller and regionally focused foundations for the types of in-person interactions that the study showed are essential for spreading new ideas and practices. And national and regional PSOs alike offer these critical learning opportunities. That same Hewlett study showed that funder networks of all types are the top source of practice knowledge that contribute to a foundation changing a practice to be more effective. So I think there's no higher value that you can have for a PSO than helping foundations consider changing their practice to be more effective and to have more impact. Also, this is something I think a value that's become even more critical recently. PSOs lead and propel philanthropy's response to critical policy and community issues. As noted in a TCC group report that came out earlier this year, PSOs are really the first call for funders when they're trying to determine how to respond to unanticipated challenges or issues, or to gain immediate answers to urgent questions outside their area of expertise. The TCC group report documents how this was definitely the case following the 2016 elections. Funders turned to the PSOs of which they were members for learning how to support, they would help support funder learning, facilitate funder networking. They provided opportunities for collective response, and they created spaces for dialogue across divides. The report also noted that PSOs increasingly are providing spaces for greater discussion among funders on issues of racial equity, diversity, and inclusion, which has been given more critical attention following the 2016 elections. This has definitely been confirmed by a racial equity scan of PSOs that the forum conducted earlier this year. And here at the forum, there is very high interest among all our members in engaging more to learn about the important leadership role and learning role that PSOs can play to advance racial equity in philanthropy. And we at the forum definitely increased our investment in resources in helping PSOs with this critical work. I think one example of how both shows the value of PSOs and the value of our PSO networks through the forum happened in January of 2017. One of the first national PSOs to join the forum once we opened up our membership in last year was Grantmakers concerned with immigrants and refugees. And you may recall one of the first actions of the new presidential administration was the travel ban, the Muslim travel ban. Because we had already created this really critical network of national and regional PSOs, we were able to bring all of the leaders of these groups together with GSER on the call to talk to us immediately about what the ban was about, the critical issues that their members should know about, how they are responding, how other funders can respond. We were able to put this call together in just a matter of hours, and immediately all of our members had the latest information they needed on how to help their members think about how to respond to this. And that's something that would never have happened in our old way of working. I think another great example of how funders can work together through PSOs to respond to critical policy and community issues is the 2020 census. 2.5 years ago, the forum started an initiative to help PSOs engage philanthropy in the 2020 census. We brought funders together in different regions and provided some funding for them to engage funders in long-term engagement in ensuring a fair and accurate census count. We created resources, talking points, and other resources that were used by all of our members, both regional and national PSOs, in a variety of ways. And I think we leveraged what was a $400,000 philanthropic investment to more than $100 million in additional government and philanthropic support for the 2020 census that can be tied directly to our initiative. Many of our regional PSOs have been engaging with their state legislatures to talk about increased funding. We had national PSOs, such as Grantmakers concerned with immigrants and refugees, and funders together to end homelessness who are looking at the census issue from those specific population groups. And it's really proven the value of PSOs to be a key source for advancing key critical leadership issues for the philanthropy field. So those are some of the key values that we, from the forum perspective, see for philanthropy serving organizations. You can check out the full list of PSOs at our website. You can certainly reach out to me. I'm happy to answer questions later in the webinar. Please feel free to reach out to me any other time if you have more questions about the forum or about PSOs. Always happy to talk about the role of philanthropy serving organizations. And so now I'm really pleased to turn things over to Tatiana Hernandez with the Kresge Foundation. So Tatiana, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Dave, and I'm so grateful that you kicked us off today, because I think the comments that I have and things that I have to share are really aligned with the way you described the value of a PSO is about connecting, learning, and sharing. And so I'm going to speak a little bit about my personal experience with Grantmakers in the Arts specifically, and how Grantmakers in the Arts has shaped not only the way I approach the field, but the value that it's brought to me as a professional in arts philanthropy. So I think first and foremost, it's worth noting I entered the field about nearly a decade ago, and specifically I was in a geography that had little to no other private philanthropy, and so connecting with peers in philanthropy was incredibly difficult from where I was geographically located. And so GIA offered an opportunity to connect with others that were doing similar work in both similar and different contexts. I'd say for reference, my first GIA conference was back in 2011, and back then there were only about 300 people in attendance. And for those of you who are in the room today and were recently at our conference in Oakland, it's quite amazing to see how quickly the membership has grown in just a short amount of time. With 300 people in the room, it was amazing to me that I quickly found like-minded colleagues and mentors in this space. You know, one of the first things that I noticed about Grantmakers in the Arts as a community of practice is how incredibly open and welcoming people were to not only new voices, but to new people in the field. And so really through the generosity and GIA, through the generosity of mentors and GIA's openness, I was quickly connected to opportunities to share my perspective on panels, through thought leader forums, and a variety of different activities that GIA offers through the course of its program. All of these opportunities to connect, both in space and time, were openings to build meaningful relationships. And I'm looking at a picture of myself and a dear colleague, Bahia Ramos, who's currently at the Wallace Foundation. When I think about the gravitational node to some of these relationships as people move both in location and in institution, GIA can really act as that connective tissue to the relationships. This is critical to me. I mean, this has been the most meaningful aspect of my relationship with GIA has been about building these trusting relationships with other people in the field. I think for those of us in philanthropy, and given the power dynamics in philanthropy, having access to people who aren't necessarily asking you for money can be a relief and can sometimes be a breath of fresh air. And I'm grateful for the space that GIA offers to be able to connect with folks like that. And I would also add that for people of color in philanthropy, having colleagues across foundations who can help you navigate and maybe make it easier to navigate the politics of philanthropy is fantastically helpful. And GIA has really made incredible efforts to build space for that over the course of the last 10 years. I think what's great in this connection with others is the opportunity to listen. There's that saying, if you've met one foundation, you've met one foundation. But for me, I found that by listening to how other foundations are structured, what their decision-making models are, how they create program strategies, etc., it helped me better understand the similarities and dissimilarities, or the possibilities for the work, what the work could look like for me wherever I was located. And so in learning from each other, over the course of my time at GIA, I've learned ways large and small that I could change both my practice and my organization's practice in order to be more responsive to the needs of our community. As GIA has embarked on a racial equity journey, I too have embarked on a personal equity journey to better understand how privilege shows up in my world and in my work. And I'm looking here at a photo of Jason Yang, who for me was a really critical mentor in my early days in philanthropy, and I want to note is also one of the catalysts for GIA's racial equity work, and so I honor him for that. Because in some of the learnings, we are challenged, and I sometimes hear things at the conference or on webinars like this one that I find challenging or have been uncomfortable, and then I'm reminded of times at the gym and how you work out and your muscles hurt. That's also uncomfortable, but it's making you stronger. I think one of the things that I truly appreciate about GIA is that it not only sees itself as a philanthropic serving organization, but it also sees itself as a mechanism for the field to get better and to get stronger and to build different muscles. One of the things that I deeply appreciate in GIA's programs is this ability to really be inspired and to gain access to people that you wouldn't necessarily connect with, either because their work exists outside of your program strategy or outside of your geographic area, but whose work is really relevant to the work that you are doing or that you are trying to do within your organization. And so this is an image of Reverend Kresge Wilson from St. Louis talking about the Ferguson uprising and the work that was happening in Ferguson kind of just directly after that. I sometimes joke that we should avoid giving ourselves repetitive stress disorder from patting ourselves on the back, but it's really important to celebrate our accomplishments and acknowledge each other's efforts and to be a part of a community of practice. GIA has grown to include a conference of over 500 people with a variety of speakers, many different webinars, and I think about the colleagues that are in the field and across the United States and Canada, actually, and how often we get to learn about each other's programs, how often we get to kind of look up from our day-to-day practice and better understand what's happening in these different areas and see opportunities not only to connect, I think to Dave's point about partnership and how PSOs can give us an opportunity to understand who might be partners to us in this work, but to really celebrate and admire the work of our colleagues. You know, I have a quote on my whiteboard right now from Majora Carter, who said, "Community is an activity, not just a place." You know, at GIA, we are in activity with one another pretty much all the time. And at a recent Kresge convening, a grantee described community change work as being both durational and relational. I would say again that GIA acts as this gravitational center for us to build the kind of trusted relationships needed to do the social change work. There are folks in the GIA community who've been doing this work their entire career over the span of multiple decades. And there are a lot of people who've really joined GIA in I would say, the last 5 years. And there's this incredible kind of intergenerational knowledge that sits in a room together once a year, and then in addition to that is in constant communication and in constant relationship with one another in between the conferences. That's the kind of community that helps to build this work and to move it forward. It's certainly done so for my life. It's certainly done so for my experience in arts philanthropy. And to Dave's point, the opportunities that GIA offers us to connect, learn, and share with one another are critical if we're all to meet our goals together. With that, I'll kick it back to Cheryl Lynn.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tatiana and Dave, for those presentations. I thought they were great, and I thought it was particularly awesome that the two presentations sort of ran the gamut from having sort of like a macro level understanding of the value of the philanthropy serving organization, and then all the way down to the, or I should say all the way over to the personal experience and the personal value that grant makers in the arts and, you know, that philanthropy organization, or this one, provides you. So that was great. And we'll now start the Q&A. So we have the Q&A that will include Dave and Tatiana, and we will also have GIA membership manager Jessica Corporan on the line if anyone has any questions for her regarding GIA membership. And please be specific about who you are directing your question to so that we can make sure that we are asking the questions of the right people. And so we will start with you, Dave. I've got a question for you. So what are the different ways that a funder can support a philanthropy serving organization?
There are, I always like talking about this question. I think number one is to be a member of a PSO. If there's a PSO that covers your region, becoming a member of that organization, supporting them is a really great first step. And again, if folks aren't sure of the regional PSO, if there is one that covers their state or region, our website can help them answer that. And also check out if there are certain issues your foundation really cares about or population groups to be members of that PSO as well. I think pretty much all PSOs have lots of different types of business models, but it's safe to say, and based on our research, that all PSOs cannot really survive, let alone thrive, on membership dues alone. They require general support funding, as they are nonprofits, just like any other nonprofit, and need general support funding. So if there's a PSO that you are a member of that you really want to show your support above dues, general support dollars is a great way to do that. If the PSO sponsors holds a conference, sponsoring their conference is another great way. And then the number one source of revenue for PSOs, according to our research, is project grants. So there are a lot of PSOs that manage different types of projects for groups of funders, and they can be great vehicles if there's a group of funders who, so like for example with the forum, there was a group of funders who really cared about engaging philanthropy in the census, and so we received project funding to help make that happen throughout our network. And so I think that's another really important way that PSOs can, that funders can support PSOs. And also to encourage, I think lastly, encourage your colleagues. If you have colleagues who you know are in your region and are active and are a member of your regional PSO, or if they are, if they are, for example, an active arts funder and they are a member of GI, Grantmakers in the Arts, encourage them to join and be part of the community and help to provide the support that's really needed. Often, those who don't join PSOs will still get some benefit from the work and the leadership of PSOs, and so I think it's important if funders are benefiting from that they provide some support, membership support.
Great, thank you for that. I'm going to kick it over to Tatiana. I know that you spoke to your personal experience with philanthropy serving organizations and grantmakers in the arts, and I'm wondering, what are the top 3 aspects in your experience from this philanthropy serving organization, GIA, that you found to be helpful? If you had to pick 3 major sort of nuggets or thoughts, what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I would say first and foremost, it's the people. We work in a particularly unique, I guess all industries would probably call themselves unique, but I would say philanthropy is a particularly unique field. And so connecting with people who understand your context from an industry perspective, but who have maybe different ways of approaching the work. Based on their structure, their organization, I think is incredibly critical. So number one for me would be the people and the relationships that you build through the work of a PSO.
Mm-hmm.
I think secondly, the research. This is something that I think Dave touched on and I did not touch on, but something worth noting is the amount of research that comes out of grantmakers in the arts, whether it be on the intersection of arts and health, or whether it be on support for individual artists, the kind of snapshot reports that GIA does on an annual and biannual basis for the field around trends in philanthropy, and specifically arts philanthropy, I find incredibly valuable, both for my own thinking and crafting program strategy, but also in providing context for my colleagues internally around where the field is going and where how that affects our work. I would say those are the top 2.
Okay. All right, great. Do you have one more that you wanted to share, or would you like us to kind of hold on to those 2 and those are the main ones?
Those are the main ones. I mean, the connecting and the learning, right? So I think to the way Dave described it, the connecting and the learning, I think the sharing piece is helpful. And that can happen interpersonally, or it can happen in contexts like this one, right? Whether it be a webinar or a panel presentation at a conference. But for me, the top 2, the connecting and the learning, are really the most critical.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. All right, so this next question is for both of you, really. So it's how can philanthropy serving organizations support the field in organizing, advocacy, or movements? And Tatiana, you can speak more specifically to the upcoming 2020 election. Dave, maybe the 2020 census, or both of you can speak to both of those. But yeah, really, how can PSO organizations support the field, as I said, in organizing, advocacy, or movement?
You want to start, Tatiana?
One of you can just dive in.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking of a couple of different examples. In addition to my responsibilities at Kresge around arts and culture, I also sit on an internal working group called Opportunity Fund that's been quite active in the last couple of years addressing issues of democracy, et cetera. And what I've found really interesting, or what has been a growing space for grant makers in the arts, is coordinating statements, frankly, from presidents and connecting the work of GIA, Grant Makers in the Arts members, to the work of United Philanthropy Forum, and seeing that our interconnectedness is critical to the interconnectedness of the ecosystems and communities that we work with and work in. So I would say that GIA has the capacity to, and maybe the unique position to connect our individual dots to the greater constellation. And I've noticed that has been really fantastically helpful for me on the opportunity fund work.
And I would just say, I would add that, and Tatiana mentioned one of the values of PSOs is that they can challenge you, and I think definitely PSOs have been and continue to be the best spots for connecting, for learning, for sharing. But there's also the leadership work and the work to challenge funders to think in a different way or to think in new ways. And I think this is happening particularly around advocacy and movements and organizing, the role for philanthropy, where they can highlight new ways for funders to think about how to engage in this work. With the census, 2.5 years ago, when we at the United Philanthropy Forum started to get involved, there was just a small group of funders talking about it. It wasn't sort of widespread, but our members were able to with our support and our help, put sessions on their conference, host different convenings with their members to really put this issue to the forefront and highlight for them why they should care about this and how they can get involved, either through their funding or through their own advocacy efforts. And that's how PSOs can make a big difference by really challenging, highlighting issues that aren't on the radar of their members and saying you should be paying attention to this, and here's why. And that's proven, definitely very effective with the census. And I think there are opportunities with other issues for PSOs to put on the radar new roles for funders to be thinking about, or ways for them to step out a little bit more in ways they haven't before to support different types of organizations, or to be a little bolder in funding advocacy, or even speaking out themselves. So, I think there's a lot of opportunity there, which in the last 2 years, as I mentioned earlier, I've seen grown, and I think there's even more opportunity for PSOs to play an important role in bringing those issues forward.
Mm-hmm. Great. And then in the theme of collaboration, one of our attendees asks, how do philanthropy-serving organizations collaborate with one another most effectively? And I know that in the presentation you spoke about sort of like one-off collaborations, maybe one event here, one event there. The Stanford article talks about the importance of building trust, and that sort of being what maintains the relationship. So can you speak more to that and the collaboration that makes the type of collaboration that makes more of an effective
Is that to me?
Effective partnership or network?
Both of us. Okay. No.
It wasn't.
Well, I would love to hear from Tatiana's viewpoint
about
that from the funder perspective, and then I can add from the PSO perspective.
Sounds great.
Well, I think it's a fantastic question, and I know one that Eddie and I have been in deep conversation around. Just at this last conference and in the last year, Eddie's participated in a couple of different meetings of philanthropic serving organizations that are not geographically based, but are issue based. So Environmental Grant Makers Association, Hispanics in Philanthropy, et cetera. And they're all in conversation to be better connected, frankly. So I would say that it's a space that some of the PSOs that I'm most familiar with are leaning into and asking the question. As we increasingly as a society move away from silo-based thinking, the PSOs, I think, are understanding that there's connection across and between their membership, and that we can do a better job at connecting the dots across the different fields. So a perfect example, as I sit in my role here at Kresge, we have 6 different program areas and 6 different departments that have 6 different PSOs. Right, but we all work together, and what my colleagues in environment are bringing back from Environmental Grant Makers Association, or my colleagues in health are bringing back from Grant Makers in Health, certainly inform our arts grant making practice and vice versa. And so I know, GIA is trying to propose a session for grant makers in health on the role of arts and culture in health and wellness. We're certainly in conversation with Environmental Grant Makers Association to better understand how artists and culture bearers can help to bring people to the table around issues of climate change and environment. And so I would say it's a great
and there I
question,
can speak in the last 2 years. I can cite a number of different examples of how national and regional PSOs are collaborating more because they are part of a single network. And it's happened. I think our original vision was that it would help the national and regionals connect better together. What we found is also helping national PSOs sometimes partner better together as well. Just quick examples, Grant Makers for Effective Organizations has partnered with the 3 regional PSOs in California on a longer-term learning project where they actually partner together on bringing the program content from GEO deep into the various regions in California. Just last week, a national PSO, previously called the Grant Makers Income Security Task Force, now called Economic Opportunity Funders, held their annual policy briefing in D.C., and they co-sponsored it with 5 other national PSOs that are part of the Forum Network. And they told us directly after that briefing that that they have before they were part of the forum, they would have like one other co-sponsor of this briefing, but now directly because of their involvement with the forum, they had 5 other national PSOs engaged with them. They also now are just engaged with regional PSOs in ways that never happened before. In terms of advocacy, I think we're also seeing things happening that didn't happen before. A few months ago, we were able to get 33 PSOs to sign a joint letter to prevent the citizenship question from being put on the census. It included, I think, some national PSOs who don't even engage in policy, but because of their involvement with the forum, were encouraged to step out and speak out a bit more through this collective letter. And again, that's the first time anything like that has happened. At the same time, our members were able to work to get more than 200 foundations to sign a similar letter. So I think in advocacy as well, we're seeing more partnership and collaboration to have a shared voice and a stronger voice together. And there are many other examples, but I'll cite those.
Yeah, no, I think that's great, especially on the note of advocacy, because that's something that definitely GIA is working more to do and to encourage other funders to get involved with comfortably. So that was great. So thank you both for answering that. We've got another question from one of our guests. This one's for you, Dave. What are the key things that led to the 93%, now it's 94, I believe, which is exciting. Great. 94%
It's a
median
great
renewal
question,
rate
and I think a
nationally
lot
for
of it is
PSOs.
some of the value that both Tatiana and I just talked about. That PSO foundations are really seeing that value, and I think realizing in addition to learning, there's a lot we don't know that we need to learn more about. If we really want to work to advance racial equity, we really need to be working together. We can't do that on our own. We need our colleagues. We need national experts. We need to get access to those folks if we really want to figure out how to respond to a changed environment in our country. It's hard to do that on our own. And so I think there's a lot of strength in numbers in a number of ways that that is definitely one, I think, key reason that I'm seeing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. And then, interesting question in terms of, offering funds to PSOs as opposed to community services. So why should a foundation or a funder give money to a PSO when that money can instead be used to support a nonprofit providing other
Tatiana?
community services?
Yeah.
I'd like to hear a funder answer that.
Or Tatiana.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting question because I've never seen it. I recognize that as funders we have limited budgets. However, the value that personally I've gotten from grant makers in the arts, in terms of, to be honest, leveraging other funder dollars, to me is more valuable than the one organization, right? So if I'm going to take the question at face value and think of it as an either or, my investment of X number of dollars above and beyond our annual membership dues has leveraged more dollars than those actual dollars. Does that make sense? So if I've given an extra $25,000, $30,000, $40,000 to GIA because GIA gives me space to be in relationship with other people who then could maybe invest 20, 30, 40, 50 in those in the organizations that I think that I might recommend to them or that they might recommend to me. It's not a quid pro quo necessarily, but the relationships are more valuable to me for the work.
And I would just add that if it surely shouldn't be positioned the way that question is, although I see it positioned that way a lot, particularly when I was running a regional PSO. But if you don't see any value in learning and connecting and sharing with others, if you think you've got it all figured out, and you don't think you need to have a collective voice or with any other funders, and you can do that on your own. I question how effective you can be. But if you feel you can do that, go ahead. But I think it's going to limit how far you can really take your investments as a funder.
It is really interesting to me that it gets framed that way.
Yes.
It's really because and maybe this is naivete for me being a decade into the field. I still think of myself as being relatively new to the field. But it's exactly your point, Dave, that the insights that you get from a PSO, the connections that you get to others in the field, and the value in and of itself of having a collective voice is deeply meaningful to me. And so it's I see GIA's work as being just as valuable, if not more so, than some of the direct service work that we support.
Wow. Great.
Great. Thank you. Thank you both. It looks like we don't have any more questions. So I am going to say thank you one more time to you, Dave and Tatiana, and Jessica for coming on to Q&A with us today and you know, we definitely enjoyed having you present and answer all of these questions about philanthropy serving organizations, your own personal experiences, you know, and you really provided a very wholesome presentation that can reach a lot of different people depending, no matter where they are in sort of like the funder community or network. So thank you for that. And to everyone else, today's presentation, great, today's presentation has been recorded, and we'll be sending you a link to this file and the presentation slides within the next day or two, along with a brief survey that we hope you will take a few minutes to fill out. Your feedback is always important to us, and it helps us to design future webinars. So at this point, if you'd like the opportunity to flip through the slides now, then we've switched over the controls to you, and the slides will be up for the next hour or two. And you can always reach out to me, Sherilyn Seeley, if you have further questions.
Thank you.
And again, we thank you so much for joining us today.
Have a great day.
Have an awesome day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.